Welcome back. And now a new report by the Coast Transparency Initiative has pointed out the gaps in the government procurement process. Now, one of the key issues the report raises is the lack of standard disclosure. Now, to speak to us about this, we have Dr. Levi Kabagambe. He is a board member from the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Authority. He's not alone. We also have Olive Kataba-Twaire, from Coast Infrastructure Transparency Initiative. Both gentlemen and lady join us right now in studio. Very good morning, Olive and Dr. Levy.
Good morning.
Dr. Levy, please give us a brief overview of how the government procurement projects and process took a center stage in the last year, 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, thank you. For us at the Procurement Authority, we continue to render services. As per our strategic plan, procurement is a supporter or enabler of service delivery. So in the COVID pandemic era, perhaps this was further heightened because we saw many entities consult how to do their procurements given the urgency they had. That said, the year has really been a little bit problematic because most of our processes are not quite responsive to emergencies. But we also saw the passing of an emergency guideline for procurement, which means there is a responsiveness at the authority side. By and large, at our side, all went on. Of course, there are some challenges. Some entities could not fast track certain procurements. The famous one of the equipment in the Ministry of Health.
Indeed.
Dr. Legal, as it has been famously referred to. We do not think the problem was largely legislation, because options of dealing with such emergencies or unique supplies exist. But perhaps our people need further capacity building so that they optimize existing procedures, which are really flexible from our point of view.
We also did hear that the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Authority was riddled with a lot of corruption allegations, Dr. Levy. What does the organization say?
At PPDA, I'm not aware of that. At the authority?
Corruption, it was like a song, the whole of 2020, Dr. Levy.
At the authority, the agency where I'm a director, you know, the problem in this country is that every procurement is called PPDA. So we need to know when PPDA is the authority or when PPDA is a procuring and disposing entity, or whether PPDA is actually a public procurement. Yeah, so it is not true that the authority called PPDA at Nakasero Towers was riddled in corruption.
Olive Kabatwaire, I believe you would beg to differ on his submission. Wasn't PPDA riddled in corruption, according to your report? And if it wasn't, what is entailed in your report?
Thank you, Romeo. Good morning, viewers. I'm Olive Kabatwaire from the Coast Initiative in Uganda. I would like to differ from that and probably maybe dwell a lot on our findings from the recently published fourth assurance report on public infrastructure projects being implemented across 8 government entities in Uganda. We looked at 23 projects, and our partnership with PPDA is majorly on at oversight level. So when we find issues to do with compliance, monitoring compliance with entities, red flags on delays in procurement, those we usually refer to PPDA as an oversight body, where we would need to standardize disclosure on procurement information. Those we refer to PPDA as the body mandated to handle that. So in our fourth assurance report, the major issues we found were aligned to delays in procurement, and Dr. Levy has said that of course partly COVID-19 has been a challenge, but this has been one of the things we've been seeing in all our 4 assurance reports that we've so far launched in Uganda. So the issue of delays in procurement, and also that also affects implementation and other stages of project delivery, was very key in the 4th assurance process. And other issues we found were, of course, we also found good things. Disclosure in the year 2020 on infrastructure, on the 23 projects has improved. And of course, this is representative of the other projects. I know we have 1 million projects being implemented in Uganda, but when we look at a few and sample across the country and we see there is improvement, it means it is across all the other projects as well. So we've seen disclosure rising to 62% overall, rising from 42% in 2019.
So far, so good.
Yes, that's progressive, and we would like to see government of Uganda standardize and mainstream this across all projects. We want to see 100% compliance from Uganda on infrastructure projects, because more disclosure builds trust and also enables the citizens to engage in monitoring, but also to own government projects.
So citizens can, in a way, offer oversight on the government projects.
Sure, yeah. So we look at 2 levels of disclosure. Proactively, and this is the information government agencies are supposed to give to the citizens without them asking for it. And this, we saw it has improved to 55%. And then reactively, what we were able to get when we went to the 8 entities, we got 70%, rising from 42% in 2019. So we commend government entities that have been able to publish information on infrastructure projects. Then we also seeing a growing level of innovativeness to enhance performance in the entities. Of course, there are some challenges, areas of improvement and areas of concern that we found majorly attributed to the overruns. The time and cost overruns are still overwhelming, and we want entities to take action on this, and probably look at improving their planning and also project management systems. We look at projects. Disclosure was mainly being done on donor websites, with very less information on government-owned platforms or websites.
It seems like government was targeting people from whom it expected money.
I wouldn't say that, but of course donors usually have their guidelines that require them to publish this information. So government of Uganda needs to take cognizance of this and also ensure that its platforms have information. Data on most of the entity website was outdated, it was inaccurate, and it was lacking, and there was no coherence with what some of them would have in their offices. And then when we went to some of the entities, information management systems were not sufficient. And here is where we call NITA to come and help the entities to strengthen information management systems. Some of them actually do not have. I think only 3 entities were beginning to work on, like Ministry of Health, KCCA and UNRA, are beginning to work on internal data management systems. So I think PPDA, we recently, in last year, we recommended that the government of Uganda should have a data management policy. This should be, that will be cascaded across all the entities. And I think also for standardization of procurement information, we've been recommending government of Uganda to adopt the open contracting for infrastructure data standard to help publish procurement information, because that level of disclosure was also a bit dwindling in this assurance process.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Olive. Dr. Levy, should the fact that most of these projects are being financed by loans worry Ugandans?
Yes. Uganda should be worried, especially where disclosure, as reported by our colleagues, is not the best.
Indeed.
Because when you borrow money, you must put it to not only to better use, but you must be seen to have done so. And you can only achieve that through maximum disclosure. I'm actually one of those saying this is a compliance issue whose target should be 100%. We need 100% disclosure. We don't need anything less than that, because the information to be disclosed is there. Why would we even put a percentage point?
So it's just the mechanisms through which you could disclose the information.
So what are we, what is government perhaps doing to upscale this?
Enlighten us.
Yes. Electronic government procurement is a strategy now, which has been launched. We are now piloting with 12 entities. It is something not going back now. we are moving ahead. After 12 entities have been piloted, we are trying to learn. We are going to be learning. Before you roar to the entire country, you must learn from these baby steps. But the learning so far is good. Had it not been for COVID disruptions, perhaps the whole of 2021 had been targeted for rollover. But nonetheless, it will soon be rolled to every entity. It will not be a choice. Some of these challenges will soon be history, because the electronic government procurement portal is going to be highly enhanced with the ability to capture all these data points as is suggested in the open contracting for infrastructure data standard. It's quite elaborate. This tool is quite expansive with about 87 data points. That's not what we have been capturing as a country. So you can see part of the variability you see is that the cost framework is expansive. It asks for very many data points. Sometimes it is not such points are not readily available, which she's calling proactive disclosure. Proactively, according to the framework of PPDA, as I've said, is unmatched with theirs. So our people will be disclosing at their level. They think they have done it towards 100%, but it is just less. Then they follow that with what they call reactive. They go and they ask, okay, give us this. And that's where some challenges are. It is not kept in one step center. So you find opening the other file, some are manual, some are really this and that. When this EGP is up and running across, I am optimistic this will be history. We shall have all the data. After all, why should the government not disclose information like when is the project starting, including did you have variations in this contract? How much variation happened? When did you complete this project? So all this information is there because wananchi want to know how much was destined to cost this project, how much did it ultimately end into, and that's what transparency is all about. So under EGP initiative, to us data challenges will be history. The other issue is obviously unifying templates, which was an undertaking. Again, as I've said, the plan of the procurement authority is to use one single window to roll this gap. Once the template is unified, of course, it will be hooked on the portal, such that it is a one-stop center for every data entry and retrieval. That's what I can say on
But you did not
data.
elaborate very well about how loans, these government projects being financed by loans are actually worrying Ugandans.
Well, the
ramifications from the fact that we are financing these projects using loans.
Well, I don't want really to dwell on the pros and cons of loan financing, but in Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, infrastructure financing remains a big challenge. No single country has the requisite resources to fund its infrastructure
So we
needs.
cannot mobilize these resources domestically.
I can tell you, for Uganda, if our oil is to get through as planned, we could be one of the few countries to get out of this hook. But in the East African region, as I see at a glance, they will remain in this loan portfolio and rising to finance infrastructure. Infrastructure is a high, expensive endeavor. But Uganda is lucky if we succeed in our oil exploration and production initiatives. As you can see, government plans to put most of those proceeds in infrastructure.
Olive Kabatwaide, what does Coast Infrastructure Transparency Initiative say about the fact that government is using loans to finance these government projects?
Like Dr. Levy has said, it's still a process, and we would like to recommend to government through Ministry of Finance to be innovative and look for available opportunities for local financing of our own infrastructure projects. And this comes to the issue, also speaks to the issue of promoting local content. government of Uganda has been talking about this issue. We would like to see more of the local firms, contractors and consulting engineers taking infrastructure development, engaging in infrastructure development. Probably that would also probably maybe reduce on the cost. Building the capacity of our own companies to do this work would reduce the cost of foreign, of getting expensive contractors from abroad to do our own infrastructure development processes. We've been promoting the fair business practices between government and private sector, and would like this conversation to continue between all the oversight bodies and the private sector, so that these issues are addressed.
Would also like to know what would be the immediate ramifications arising from the fact that government is actually failing to involve the people or the public in the execution of these projects.
Of course, lack of citizen engagement, and you've heard the president speak about this in most areas where he's going to either commission projects or to hand over or to monitor or to launch. We've seen lack of citizen engagement or stakeholder participation, even with the local governments and central governments, reduces trust. And where there is no trust, there is no ownership, and where there is no ownership, there can't be participation as well. So trust is very key as we talk about infrastructure delivery. We've seen experiences like in this assurance report in one of our projects where citizens were harvesting stones on a tarmac road, and probably this happened because of lack of information, but also lack of participation and lack of ownership. So if people are aware, they know what is being done and the benefits of these projects, they would be able to own them and also protect and preserve them. Yeah.
And also offer accountability and oversight.
Yes.
Dr. Levy, there's this issue of projects being designed at the national level and then implemented at the local level. How does this affect the whole overall project implementation?
Okay, but allow me also to clarify.
Please do make
on the earlier submission. The argument was on loans, but it is also not true that government of Uganda does not apply domestic or own sources of revenue for infrastructure. And the reason disclosure is key. On the signpost, there is a variable called financing. And that's why we are insisting. And perhaps she will elaborate on other modalities of disclosure. Financing is key. In Uganda now, many people will tell you that every infrastructure has been financed by loans. And sometimes I would say, how best do they know if it is not loans? Loan is highly marketable. But a lot of infrastructure as well has been financed locally. Some of these huge infrastructure developments in certain municipalities, save for the USMID, which is a World Bank or funded, but some other roads really, UNRA here, a number of road networks is really locally funded. But the challenge is if the signboard does not show financing clearly that government of Uganda, a number of them have been put, some have been skipped. So I think this would motivate Ugandans to know that infrastructure of this kind of category is our own money. And that also touches what she has said. How do you harvest stones from a road which has been financed through your tax? Perhaps people think that is government and they don't know how far government goes. Government is actually in their pocket. So I think we shall emphasize financing of that project. It is partly an engagement of a local person to know this is my money. I cannot take away the signpost which tells me reduce speed or take away the stones. I think I had to clarify on that. Then,
and on the issue of projects being designed at the national level and implemented at the local level, how does that affect the overall implementation of those projects?
On the face of it, it has been problematic. On the face of it, I can tell you, I can start from that, it has been problematic. 2 points I observed.
But how problematic?
Problematic in this way. Involvement is key, even when nothing is bad.
It's like you're just throwing the project to the local leaders.
Thank you. Even if there is nothing
and
bad,
they know about they know nothing
they will,
about the
they will
design.
actually start it from that point. What is this project? Where was it? Who said we needed it? Things like that. And then suspicion. Why are they excluding us? into the design and the planning and all those
and
kinds
it's
of
hard to
things.
implement something that you were never involved in at
Exactly.
the creativity level. I mean,
Exactly.
the designation.
Yes. So on the face, and you know, with our culture, the moment you start off with a suspicion, malice comes in. You just want to wish it to collapse. We have seen this. But what has the government done, and what has procurement, particularly at the authority, done in terms of this issue? Such things have come up, and we have advised and actually have followed. There is need to have an MOU of implementation. To us, it may not necessarily require that no project should be designed at the center and implemented in the local government. What's tactically the problem? What matters is what are the implementation modality? What is the role and the responsibility of the parties? And these MOUs have now been put up. There is a lot of work going on between health, designed up at the headquarters, but of course implemented in these other local governments. So there are MOUs now. I don't expect people to continue raising this question. You just read your responsibility in that MOU. You don't demand that everything should have started here, because if the financing agreement is like that, so it is difficult to demand to do what you want. But what matters is what have we agreed. You will monitor the project, you will select the contractor. Because right now, the local governments are the ones selecting contractors. Advertisement could be at the central government because of cost, but the evaluation of bids and contracting, and even they sign these contracts at the local government level. So partly, I can see they're involved, and they are partly getting grip onto the selected contractor, and therefore they should supervise the downstream projects.
Of course, Olive Kabatwaire, you were also telling me about how in these projects there is low levels of inclusion for the women and people living with disabilities. Help us elaborate on that.
We found that in the fourth assurance process, data that was disclosed to us and also through our site visits on sites, we noted a growing trend of involvement of citizens on projects as employees. And this was highly noticed with UNRWA projects, and that's why they got an award on local content. But most of our projects, especially those that are not donor funded, especially those that are not GOU projects, we've found gaps on that. And then compliance, even I don't know, maybe PPDA would advise guideline, the contracting documents, the bidding process documents should have provision for inclusion of women, young people, the youth, and people with disabilities. Having projects with the requirements for people with disabilities, like ramps on infrastructure, on buildings, and maybe there are walkways for people with disabilities on roads, and things to do with shoulders, protective measures on projects. Signage on health and safety should be also done. Issues to do with awareness raising on health and safety. We found only health projects, Ministry of Health projects majorly with information on COVID-19 protection, prevention. So that should be clear. Health and safety, social safeguards should be part of the contracting process.
Indeed. Dr. Levy, what is being done by the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Authority to ensure participation of the women, the youth, and people with disabilities?
Oh, that was done a couple of months ago.
What is the progress now?
Now, what we did, we reviewed all bidding documents and incorporated what people call SHE. But this one has two S's, H and E. It is a SHE, but enhanced with another S.
SSHE.
SSHE. Social, safety, health, and environment.
I see.
So those four ingredients are now an integral part of the bidding process and the selection. A contractor is selected, among others, upon demonstrating that safety, social, including women, disability, all those social aspects, how you intend to deal with them, HIV and AIDS, all that kind of thing, safety, signs, RAMs and all things, health and environment. So this is already sorted. The guideline was issued. I mean, the bidding documents were reviewed and issued. They are the ones currently being used. And I would encourage our counterpart during these kind of assurances to take keen interest how they are being implemented, because it is already a directive.
Dr. Levy and Olive Kabatwaire, many thanks for having made the time to speak to us right here on NTV. Now the viewers are more than enlightened. Thank you. And of course, you're still watching Morning at NTV. Let's take a breather. We'll be right back with more information only here on the #1